Welcome to Prism Technologies. I am Venkat. This is part 7 of ASP.NET MVC tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss models in an MVC application. Please watch part 6 of this video series before proceeding with this video. Let's understand models with an example. Let's say I want to retrieve an employee information from this table TBL employee and then display that specific employee information in our MVC application, as you can see on the slide. So obviously, to encapsulate employee information, I need to have an employee model class. So let's go ahead and add employee model class to our MVC project. So let's flip to Visual Studio. And then to add an employee model class, right click on the models folder, select add class, and let's name the file as employee.cs because this is going to contain our employee class, and click add. And then this employee class needs to have properties to encapsulate employee ID, name, gender, and city columns. So let's go ahead and add those properties to our employee class. So employee ID is going to be integer. So public int employee ID. Let's have get and set accessors. Now these are auto-implemented properties. So if you're new to auto-implemented properties, we discussed about properties extensively in C# video series. Now let's go ahead and add properties for name, gender, and city columns as well. So public string name and the get and set accessors. And let's add properties for gender and city as well. Gender, and the final one is going to be city. Okay, so we have our employee model class right now. Now let's go ahead and add employee controller to our project. So right click on the controllers folder, add controller, and let's go ahead and call this employee controller. Click add. That should add employee controller.cs file. And look at this, by default the name of the action method within this employee controller class is index, but let's change it to details because we want to display an employee details. Alright, now in reality we actually retrieve employee information from this database table. Okay, but for now I'm going to hard code an employee information within this controller action method. In a later video session we'll see how to actually retrieve that from a database table. For now, let me hard code employee information right here within this details action method. Now look at this, I need to use the employee class, but I don't find the employee class. Why is that? The employee class is actually present in this file employee.cs, and then if you look at the class here, this is present in a namespace called mvcdemo.models. And where is our employee controller class present? It's present in mvcdemo.controllers namespace. Okay, so obviously if I have to use the employee class without using the fully qualified name, then it's better to actually use this using statement using mvcdemo.models, and then let's specify our employee class employee, and let's say the object is also employee, and let's instantiate the employee properties here. So employee ID is equal to, let's say for example 101, name is equal to John, and let's say gender is equal to male, and city is equal to London. Okay, so we have the employee object within the controller now, within the controller action method. Now I need to hand this employee object over to a view, and then the view will render that employee to the browser. It generates the HTML, sends it back to the requester to client. So obviously we need to add a view which can present the employee information to the end user. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a view to our project, and the best way to add a view, you right click on this project, in the controller action method, and then from the context menu select add view, and look at the name of the view details. It matches with the name of the action method, and then this time I'm going to check this box, create a strongly typed view, and remember we have already built employee model class. Okay, so I'm going to strongly type this view with that employee model class, and to do that I need to select the employee model class from this drop down list. But look at this, at the moment we don't have this employee class within the drop down list. Why is that? Because after we have added the employee class, we didn't really build our project. That's why we don't have that within this model class drop down list. So let's cancel out of this. Let's build our project. Now let's go back to our action method, right click on that, from the context menu select add view, and then check this box, create strongly typed view. Now look at the drop down list, I have our employee class. I'm going to select that and click this button add, which should add details view. Look at this, it automatically added a folder with name employee, and then it added that details view to that folder. And look at the first line here, it says at model is equal to MVC demo.models.employee. So now this view is strongly typed with this employee object. Okay, so the model for this view is actually the employee class. Okay, so the employee properties will all be available within this view. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to display the labels on the first column and the actual values for those labels in the second column. So I need a table with 2 TDs. I need 4 TRs, and then every TR should have 2 TDs. So let's go ahead and add a table to our view. So first of all, look at the heading here, it says employee details. So let's go ahead and change this to employee details, and let's also change the title of the page as employee details. And now let's add a table. Let's specify a style for this table as font-family as Arial. Okay, now within this table let's add a table row, and then let's add 2 TDs within that table row. So in the first TD we need, let's say, employee ID, and then let's say I want that to be bolded, the label itself, so we can put that in a bold tag like so. And I want to display the employee ID itself here. So how do I get employee ID? Look at this, the model for this view is employee object. Okay, so I can simply say at model dot, look at that, the IntelliSense shows the model is employee object. So when I say model dot, I get employee ID, name, gender, and city, all these properties. So I'm going to select employee ID there. And similarly I need to add another TR and then specify model.name, gender, and city as well. And just to speed things up, I have that already typed, so it's just that I have 3 more TRs, and each TR having 2 TDs. Okay, so let me copy this and paste it in our view. So if you look at that, it's very straightforward. I have another TR here, actually, yeah, I have another TR, and then it has got 2 DDs. So name and then model.name. Now you can have a bold tag as well here, so that the labels are bolded. Let's do that for gender as well. And finally for city as well. Okay, so at this point we have all the HTML that's required. Let's go ahead and run this and see what's going to happen. So obviously when we run this now, the URL will not have, look at the URL, it doesn't have the controller name and the controller action method. So if we don't specify the controller name and its action method, it's going to by default use home controller and index action. But instead of that, now we actually want to go to employee controller, and within that we want to navigate to details action method. So to do that, I'm going to use employee as the controller name and details is the action method name. Let me press enter and see what's going to happen. Now look at this, I get this error, object reference not set to an instance of an object, meaning I have a null reference exception. Why do you think we have a null reference exception? Look at the line where we have got the error. It says at model.employee ID. That's where I have the problem. When it's trying to retrieve the employee ID, it's not present. Okay, so basically the model is null. On a null object I am trying to retrieve employee ID. That's why we have null reference exception. Okay, why is that model null? That's because if you look at our controller action method here, we have the employee object here, the model object, but did we pass that object to our view? We didn't pass it. That's why within the view, within the details view, this model will be null. So if it is null, on a null object we are trying to retrieve properties, so obviously we'll get a null reference exception. So now within our employee controller, let's go ahead and pass this employee object to this view. Alright, with that change, let's go ahead and run this, and then let's change the URL to employee details, and let's see if we get the output as expected. Look at that, employee details, I get employee ID, name and gender and city as expected. So the controller response, if you look at this model view controller, the controller receives the request from the URL and gets data from a model and hands that model over to a view, which will then render the data to the end user. And our model usually consists of entities or business objects. Alright. On this slide, you can find resources for ASP.NET C# and SQL Server interview questions. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.